I'm running for speaker.
You might as well, George.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our meeting tonight. It's our last at the Working Man's Club before the election. From previous meetings, we've touched on the fact from George of Brexit, Britain and the general election. And throughout every meeting from myself, it's been about why George is the best candidate. Today, I'm not going to rip apart the two parties, Labour and the Tories, because I think I've done enough of that so far. I just want to touch the fact of what a fantastic campaign it's been so far. I mean, the first thing that happened when George turned up to West Bromwich, and the first pledge that he gave the people, was that he was going to look into the corruption of Samwell, and especially Samwell Council. Now, straight away, that's put them on the back foot. Okay? They're worried, they're scared. And if you look from what we've seen over the last few weeks, it's getting worse and worse. We've had an article in the Express and Stars about the big banner in which we placed up over the M5, with Labour complaining that it's on a listed building, even though we've got permission, so it can stay where it is for now. The second part for that, for me, is by law, they were meant to give us venues in the schools. We're meant to be allowed to hold public meetings in these schools. And what they've done, they've stripped us from these schools. We're not allowed inside the schools. But the thing for me as well, we canvass outside a lot of these premises. And then me, myself, have been out with the team, and I've even had pressure from the head teachers of certain schools, which I won't name, that have asked me to move from public property. Now, that's one of the things that they've been doing, Labour to us. And then the last thing that they've done, being a local lad, born and raised on Hatley Heath, I managed to get us alternative venues within 4 local pubs. How many of those went through, George? One pub. Have a guess what happened to the next 3. Someone, who I can't name, has visited these locations and applied pressure to these pubs to stop us having these meetings. Now, this shows that they're scared of George. They don't want George in West Bromwich East, because they know that the first thing as MP is there's going to be a lot of exposure. Now, we've had Labour for many years, and it's been awful for us, okay? Labour MP, Labour Council, it's just not working. But many of our people, before we've spoke to them about what George is about, and I know we'll touch on that a little bit later, is, we're going to go for the Tories. We're going to go for the Tories until we do actually speak to them. And then I've always asked why. And there's only one message that they can give me. It's the party of getting Brexit done. Okay? But what they don't understand is it's years and years of a transition period. Forget about Brexit. We've had a decade of a Tory government. The Tory government that's given us austerity, poverty, and we're a low-income area, a working-class area. Why do we want these people that are only interested in filling their back pockets for the rich? Why do we want that in Samwell? Why do we want it in West Bromwich? Because it doesn't work. Now, we can go down the traditional route of the 2 main parties. We can have a fantastic Labour candidate who decides to stuff his socks. Or on the other hand, we can have a local lady, as she says, from Dudley, who, what I've seen, is more interested in the businesses than the people. She spent a little bit of time canvassing, but the people that we've come across in the town centre, none of them have said, oh, I've spoken to Nicola Richards. All they've said is, oh, we've had a leaflet through the door. George has been the only candidate who's been out there in the harsh weathers, in the rain, when it's absolutely coming down. He's still standing there, all through. He doesn't leave. He doesn't have to stand here. He's decided to do this because he knows what our area is like to live in, because he comes from a working class background. And this is one of the reasons I want George to be our representative. One, there's no party whip behind him, telling him what he can and can't do. The only voices he answers to is ours. And I know George is a very honest man. He's a loyal man. And that's another tick in the box for me. I think the exposure of the corruption in Sandwell is a great starting point, because a lot of us in the room don't know it, because we don't see what happens. We just see the headlines. We've had so many council representatives who have either been made to resign or have left before they've been pushed. We've seen it from the leader himself. And I don't want that circle to keep going and going and going. We need a working class representative. We need a working class party. And that starts by electing George Galloway on the 12th. And on that note, please welcome Mr. George Galloway.
Thank you very much indeed, Callum, and ladies and gentlemen, for again braving the elements for the last of our Friday meetings. We will have another public meeting on Tuesday, about which more later, but another outstanding introduction from the best thing that's happened to me in this campaign so far, to discover this 23-year-old gifted orator and political activist that we're going to hear much more about, I can promise you. Now, you've set the scene beautifully, in fact, for the main burden of my remarks. Labour and the Conservatives in this constituency are two cheeks of the same arse. And it's time to give them both a good walloping. Because Labour has profoundly, I was going to use the term let down, but that's not sufficient, has betrayed the trust of the people in West Bromwich. They have betrayed it over decades. And that betrayal is absolutely personified in the departure of Tom Watson and the arrival of Ibrahim Douglas. What do I mean? Tom Watson must have known before the first day of the election that he was not standing again at this general election. That's a given. Nobody decides when the election's already begun that they are bailing out, jumping ship. But he deliberately timed it that way so that the local people, local Labour people, would have no chance of putting forward one of their own to be the candidate. He did it in a way and at a time that guaranteed that a silk parachute, woolen maybe, would drop from the sky and you would not know who they intended to be your Labour MP until they actually landed amongst you, when you had absolutely no say whatsoever in that selection. That's a pretty big betrayal, you know. And I mean, I'm not in the Labour Party, still less in the West Brom East Labour Party. But I'd be pretty betrayed if that happened to me. After all, it's only a few weeks before that he stood for re-selection and was re-selected as the Labour candidate. He must have done so knowing that he was going to betray the trust of the very people who were reselecting him. That's a pretty big betrayal. I doubt if he'll ever show his face here in West Bromwich again. He didn't show it much, actually, in recent years when he was your MP. But if he ever does show his face here again, If it's still recognisable, who knows what size he'll be next time we see him.
Anorexic.
He could be anorexic or he could be Billy Bunter again, who knows? This is a man of compulsions. But the main compulsion was to betray the people of West Bromwich East. And who did they drop from that parachute? Labour has managed to add insult to injury. Watson's 19 years here was a very considerable injury to the people here for reasons I shall expand on in a minute. But nobody thought that Labour could do worse by the people of West Bromwich East than what they have done with the selection. You can't call it a selection, it's an anointment, isn't it? It's one or two people picked Ibrahim Douglas, and the day before they picked him, he tried to be the MP in Northfields, in Hall Green rather. He was beaten in Hall Green the day before, and he told the people in Hall Green all the reasons he was perfectly suited to be the MP for Hall Green, and then just changed the name the next day when he was picked for West Brom. By the way, only a few weeks before that, he'd done the same in Vauxhall, where he is the current mayor of Lambeth. Nobody believed that they could manage to pick somebody worse than Tom Watson, but they have. And everywhere I go, everyone recognises that. They thought it couldn't get worse than Watson, but it did. Now, either this is a death wish, the people that picked him did so knowing that he was going to lose, or it is the biggest insult you can imagine. Because they thought that a multi-millionaire kebab king that pays his workforce pounds less per hour than the platform on which he's standing for election, he wants the employers in West Brom East to pay their workers pounds more than he is paying his workers now, and will go on paying them. He said this week that he would pay the living wage if we get a Labour government. Well, as the polls indicate, that's not going to happen. Hard luck, the workforce of Mr. Ibrahim Douglas, because they're going to continue to get minimal wages. And if they have the misfortune to be under 18, they'll get the bargain basement cut rate young persons national minimum wage, which his party is supposedly completely against. But of course, even that isn't the half of it. Neither is the fact that he is so fanatically anti-Brexit, a policy supported by virtually 7 out of 10 people here, that on the receipts in his restaurant he prints at the bottom of the receipt that you get when you give him money to make him even richer, that Brexit is evil. So he's telling you that voted for Brexit that you vote at nature if you vote for evil. At best it means you've facilitated evil, and at worst it means that you are evil. Well, that's a winning ticket, isn't it? But even that is not the half of it. Labour is asking you to vote for a man who was caught smuggling £11,500 out of the country in a sock. And the judge confiscated the money. And the judge said, your story is, quote, unbelievable, unquote. The judge said, you were doing this for the purposes of tax evasion, not avoidance. Evasion, a criminal act of theft from the taxpayer, from the exchequer, from the public, from the people here in West Brom. Now, as I said last week, that might have been the only time he ever done that. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge in London I can sell you at a knockdown price. The socks in which the money was hidden had a specially sewn in compartment, the police said, for the hiding of the money. Well, what do you say about a party that insults you so systematically as that? Well, I'll tell you what I think the people are going to say on Thursday to Ibrahim Douglas: clear off back to Lambeth. You're not wanted here in West Brom East. Of that I'm certain, by the way, and I've been fighting elections for 50 years. Of that I'm certain. There is more chance for a snowball in hell than there is of Ibrahim Douglas being elected here as your MP. Of that I'm absolutely certain. Somebody said to me at the Yemeni mosque today, by the way, he's been going around the mosques telling people how Muslim he is. I don't think he told them he owns his own brewery, brewing his own beer. But you get a receipt saying Brexit is evil once you've bought his booze. But somebody said to me that you'll split the vote and let the Tory in. Labour's chances of holding this seat died the minute that that parachute opened to reveal Ibrahim Douglas. On all sorts of levels, for all kinds of reasons, the people here will not vote for him. That leaves, therefore, the Conservative. Well, she's a pleasant enough looking woman, and she comes from nearby, in Dudley. But as any supporter of West Bromwich Albion could tell you, being a local boy is not good enough to do the kind of job that is needed that Slaven Village, who isn't from Dudley, isn't from West Brom, but is doing so brilliantly at the Albion right now. What matters is, can you do the job? Well, I have not heard this woman speak, because amongst the many things that you mentioned, you missed one. This is the only constituency in Britain where there are no hustings, so the people can compare the candidates on a platform and ask them questions. The only one in Britain. Why do you think that is?
Running scared.
Why do you think that is? Just a coincidence? I'll tell you what happened. Labour and the Conservatives agreed between them, let's not have any hustings in West Bromwich East, because Galloway will tear the two of us to pieces on the platform. That's exactly what was agreed. So I've never heard her. I've never heard of her. And I tell you this, if she becomes your MP, you'll never hear of her again. You'll never hear of her again. You'll see her getting crowned at the count, and you'll never hear of her again. The waters will close over West Bromwich East, and absolutely nothing will change. Because if you vote for the same old, don't expect anything else except the same old. People are saying, all over the country actually, they're tired of these two cheeks of the same arse. They're tired of Tweedledum or Tweedledee. Well, if you're tired of it, you've got to vote for something different. Something that will unleash new potential here in West Brom. And I believe that that potential exists. But before I leave this Lady, what's her name, Richards? Miss Richards, the Conservative candidate. I haven't heard her speak. She's never written anything, so I can't consult her policy agenda. But if she's the representative of Boris Johnson, the serial liar, cheater, deceiver, bumbling old Etonian oaf, then don't expect anything good to come of her representation of you. What do you have to do with the Conservative Party, for God's sake? It's not an accident that the Conservatives have never, ever won this constituency, because the people here instinctively know that the Conservative Party exists for others, not for you. Nothing good will come out of electing a Tory MP, except get Brexit done. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm more Brexit than Councillor Richards could ever dream of being, and Ibrahim Bogus would never even pretend, could never even pretend to be. If you want Brexit done, trust me, elect me, someone who's been working for Brexit since 1975, and there's only you, Jim, old enough in the room to remember that, and you. I toured this country with the late and great Mr. Ben, ferrying his tea, carrying his pipe and his tobacco in the referendum campaign of 1975. I didn't speak, I was 21 years old, I was just the gopher. But Mr. Ben addressed the audience daily, nightly, twice a day, telling people that nothing good could come for Britain out of joining the then common market. He predicted, absolutely to a T, exactly what would happen if we did. He said all the industry will go to Germany, the agriculture would go to France, and we'd be left doing the numbers on the computers that didn't yet then exist in the city of London. We would become a country fixated by financial services. Germany would be the industrial powerhouse, and France with a bit of industry, but mainly an agricultural powerhouse. By the way, how is France going? Yesterday, there were millions of French workers on the streets, on the march. How I wish we were a bit more like the French. How I wish we would stand up for our rights in the way that the French do. Maybe one day we shall, with the right leadership and the right representation. But everything Mr. Ben predicted came to pass. I said to you last week about the time machine. If you sat in a time machine in the high street and watched the decades go by, travelled back to the year before we joined the European Union, this very place was the workshop of the whole world. This very place was manufacturing and mining, manufacturing things that we still need today, we still use today. Somebody said to me again at the Yemeni mosque today, well, you're talking about an age that's gone. Well, am I? Have cars gone out of fashion? Buses, trucks, vans, motorbikes? Does nobody make them or use them anymore? And of course they do. It's just that they're made by somebody else, somewhere else, rather than us. If you took that time machine to the high street, in 1972, people came from all over the West Midlands to shop in that high street. You could buy, as was said here, anything from a tack to a tank without crossing the road in the high street in West Bromwich. Now it's pound shops, pawn shops, cash converters, charity shops, people begging, people homeless, people on drugs, people on sticks. It's like a scene from elsewhere in another time. Our people have been beggared by 45 years in the European Union and beggared by neoliberal economics by successive Labour and Conservative governments over that period. Our people have been de-skilled. All the skills have been exported. The profits have been exported. Our role, and you touched on it last week, how you were proud of the work your forefathers used to do. Is that what we're reduced to? Have we become a museum where young people reminisce about the fact their grandfather used to make things? What kind of hopelessness does that imply? Now you see me, I have limitless confidence in our people. I have limitless confidence that we can make things again. And if we have a government outside of the European Union committed to doing so, we can re-industrialize the West Midlands. The skills are there, the potential is there. Of course we can't turn the clock back and make the same things, but we can make better things. What, are we stupid? Is there something less about us than about German people? I don't believe that for 1 minute. I used the word earlier about potential. We need somebody to unleash that potential. And so this is probably a good time to tell you, we are going to contest the West Midlands Mayor position next May, and we're going to try and win control of a £17 billion budget, and the platform will be an industrial revolution in the West Midlands. That's our demand. And those workers in 1972, they had proper jobs, you know. They had 40-hour a week, more than 40 hours, and time and a half on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and double time on a Sunday. They had blue collars. They had trade union cards. They had a decent pay. The Tories say Corbyn's going to take us back to the 1970s.
If only.
I wish we could go back to the 1970s. I wish we could go back. When all the workers had a job, all the people had a house. My kid there came out of the station tonight, saw a ball of rags sitting in the cold and the rain, and asked, is there anybody in there? I said, no, but there will be by the time nightfall. There was nobody sleeping on the streets anywhere here in 1972. Workers had pensions. Workers had in-work benefits. Women had equal pay. People had equal rights. There was a Clean Air Act for any green thinkers here. We invented it in 1958, long before environmentalism was a thing. We were a good country before. We can be a good country again if we elect the right people to fight for us with the right plans. I'm conscious of the time, so let me conclude. I got a lot of pressure. I keep mentioning this Yemeni mosque. Anyone here from the Yemeni mosque? I was quite shocked. Yes, brother. As you know, because you were there, I was quite shocked by the reaction of some of the people. I think Bogus had been there before me. Although I've been here since August and he's been here only since day 2 of the election campaign. But he seems to have been there. People there are still arguing about why we should leave the European Union. Well, quite apart from the reasons I've just given you, we must leave the European Union because we voted to do so. Otherwise, democracy means nothing. You can form a party, or you can adopt, in the existing parties, a policy of rejoining the European Union, but only once we've left. You cannot tell 17.5 million people, the biggest number of people who ever voted for anybody or anything in the history of democracy in these islands, that you can vote, but if we don't like how you voted, we'll cheat you out of the result that you voted for. Because that way lies real dangers. It lies not just a loss of faith and a fall in turnout in elections in Britain. It risks the rise of people who say that democracy is a sham. Have no faith in it. Follow us instead on a different path. And I don't need to spell out to you what that path looks like. If I'm elected, I'll vote with the Tories only once to get Brexit done. Once we've got Brexit done, I'll be a more effective opponent of the Conservative Party than virtually any other Member of Parliament in the House of Commons. Because I hate everything else about them. But if Labour lose this election, and it seems that they're going to, the polls are settling down with Labour on roughly 33, and the Conservatives on roughly 43. That's a lot of votes, by the way. That's millions of votes. And so a Conservative majority government looks certain. Whose fault is that? Well, it pains me to say this, but it's the fault of the Labour leaders. They decided, under pressure from the metropolitan elite inside their bubble, that Brexit could be defied successfully without paying the political price for it. And I warned them at the time, on my radio show, on my television show, in writing, in speaking, in telephone calls. I warned them repeatedly. See, unlike them, I'm very often in the north for football reasons and for family reasons. So I actually meet the working class Labour voters. And heaven knows we've met enough of them on this campaign. And I knew that if Labour allowed itself to be manoeuvred into a position of being the betrayed Brexit party, they could not survive. They'd pile up majorities amongst liberally minded, university-educated, middle-class, prosperous people. They might get 30, 40,000 majorities in those seats. But in places like West Bromwich East, they could, and by the way, not just here, in West Bromwich West, in Northfields. I just read a very important piece of commentary today by the fellow Goodall, Lewis Goodall, ex-Sky News, who's just been in Northfields and predicts a big Tory victory there. There's going to be Conservative victories right across the Midlands, East and West Midlands. And the fault for that lies with the Labour leaders. Now, I personally don't blame Corbyn personally for this. He's been taken hostage. by the betrayers around him in his own party. Imagine for a moment his dilemma. 172 of his own MPs voted no confidence in him to get him out only a couple of years ago. And he had to pick a shadow cabinet from Labour MPs, almost all of whom wished him gone. Some of them wished him dead, trust me. Some of them nearly killed him, trust me. And as soon as they were around that shadow cabinet table, they set to work. And they have manoeuvred him into a position that has rendered a Labour victory almost impossible. It's not impossible, by the way, that there could be a hung parliament. That's not impossible. It's not likely, but it's not impossible. But if there is a hung parliament, the last person who will be the Prime Minister is Jeremy Corbyn. Because even his own MPs will not support him as Prime Minister, never mind the other parties that would be required to do so. And I'm very sorry personally about that. I've known him for almost 40 years and sat beside him literally for almost 30 years in Parliament. So this is all coming to a sad end. And we need to start something new. Because after Corbyn will come a return to the front ranks of the Labour leadership of all the ragbags of Blairism that have been temporarily absent from the scene. Expect David Miliband back from the United States. Expect Keir Starmer, he's here. He's out campaigning for a select few. Expect Sir Keir Starmer. Expect Lady Nuggie, the proper name of Emily Thornberry. Expect Yvette Cooper, remember her. Expect all these people back in the Labour Party's leadership. If Labour loses on Thursday, the party will stage a mass retreat from the policies that so many people joined the Labour Party to support. And therefore, I'm one of those who believes that a new party, a Brexit Labour Party, if you will, a party that positively embraces the potential for us with our own currency that isn't dictated by someone else, controlling our own borders, controlling our own outflow of capital, controlling our own national purchasing and local authority purchasing, the potential that exists. I'm one of those that believes that a new party will not only be necessary, but will begin to attract huge numbers of people who will look at the Labour Party that will emerge from next Thursday and the change that will happen and decide that that avenue, that alley has turned out to be a blind one. And we will be having a meeting tomorrow, and you'll read about it and see it online, that will announce the formation of something new. It'll be a long march, to coin a phrase. I may not get there with you, but my sons will, and I hope many of you will also. Thank you very much indeed for coming and for all your interest.
Well, ladies and gents, if you do have any questions to put forth to George, just pop your hand up and I'll try and come around to as many as I can. Who wants to start us off? Yeah.
There's a independent alternative press or medium what's on the internet called UK Column. Not so long back, they had one of their programmes was talking about certain issues as regards to Brexit. And there's certain things that the general populace don't really know about the European Union. For example, they mentioned something along the lines that if there's any sort of civil disobedience in this country, real civil disobedience, but they have the power then to co-opt the security services over here, the police, the army and whatnot. Be controlled via Brussels as opposed to over here.
Mm.
The government over here will have no say whatsoever. You know what I mean? And another thing as well I mentioned as well, I also mentioned that this Brexit thing, it's going to take 3 years, between 3 and 5 years to completely come out of Brexit. So what we've been pumped, what we've fed via the media today is as regard we'll be out of it within, what, 2-3 weeks or whatever, what it may be. That's not a bullshit. It's going to take a long time to come out of Brexit. And the European Union will not allow England or Britain to come out of Brexit without destroying or damaging England. Simple, or Great Britain, sorry, simple as
Yeah.
well. So there's a lot of shit what the general populace aren't aware of, because they're not being told the truth by the so-called mainstream press. And you need to look into alternative viewpoints or alternative means of getting information. Really put the European law and the constitution and whatnot, and you'll find out what's really going on, because there's a lot of power things behind the scenes which is going to shock people, it's really going to shock people. And as regards to Labour, and what you just mentioned there, the scenario you presented, I'm of the opinion it's all been done deliberately. It's been done deliberately to get the Tories back in, or an own parliament back in, to steer the country back into Europe.
Well, they definitely want a hung parliament so that that can stop Brexit, no doubt about that. I'm quite big on alternative media. I have more than 1.5 million followers on social media, to whom I just took your picture, I can send it now to more than 1.5 million people. I'm on television and radio literally 7 days a week on alternative platforms. We make videos, write columns. I long ago abandoned the so-called mainstream media. If the independent newspaper rang me now and asked me for an interview, I'd laugh in their face, because only 40,000 people would read it. Whereas I can reach multiples of that and do so all day and every day. So you're right, we have to build this alternative media. The media in this general election campaign has plumbed new depths, absolutely new depths of venality, distortion, lies. And so we have to, there's no point in trying to persuade them. You never will. We have to build our own media. But on your first point, it's a brilliant point. During the referendum campaign, when we said that there was going to be a European army and our armed forces will be subjugated to it, they called us conspiracy theorists. I mean, I was there, I was on the television when it was said, this is a conspiracy theory. No sooner did we vote to leave, and it was confirmed by Merkel and Macron that we're going to have a European army. Now, as you know, I love German people. But can you imagine the British people allowing their army to be commanded by a German general? I cannot. I actually want us to elect our own generals. But I'm certainly not going to agree to foreign generals and foreign ministers controlling Britain's armed forces. As a matter of fact, that would be an affront to the vast majority of people in Britain. But that, if we stayed in the European Union, is precisely what's going to happen. And not just the armed forces, because you're right. If you look at what happened in France yesterday, not just in Paris, but in Toulouse and many other places, this was actually a civil war that was going on. Firefighters, imagine, firefighters being violently attacked by effectively paramilitary police officers. The riot police in France are effectively a paramilitary force. And they were attacking firefighters. Everywhere was going up in flames. Hundreds of people were injured. Gas everywhere, smoke everywhere. How long before that kind of thing came here and that kind of policing came here? So there are many, many reasons for leaving the European Union. My own view is we're getting out just in time. just in time before it gets really, really ugly. They talk about us as if we are the far right. In fact, Labour people were saying that in the elections to the European Parliament. Those of us who voted, as I did, for the Brexit Party in the European Parliament elections, we were called far right. But actually the far right is in every other European country except here. This is the only country where there are no far right MPs. There are no far right councillors. The far right is minuscule here. The best way to make it grow, though, is to defy the people who voted for Brexit. Then you'll see the far right in Britain, just like you see in other places.
George,
Ma'am.
following through from what you said about the European Army and the UK having its own army and making its own decision, what concerns me with what you've just said is, wouldn't that, especially what you've said about the Labour, isn't there a danger that we would become more of a satellite to the US and do the US's bidding, which we did with the Iraqi war? Isn't there a danger there?
There is a danger, and it depends on what government we elect. The difference is, we'll be responsible for electing that government. And if we elect a government that wants to be a satellite of the US, more fool us. What we have at the moment is a European Union that acts as a satellite for the US, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Even if none of us liked it, if the European Union and NATO, which are synonymous, decided to make a war, God forbid, in the Ukraine or in the Baltic states, we'd be in it, whether we liked it or not. What we will have the chance to do, don't get me wrong, as I think I've said to you before, ma'am, I am so not a pacifist. Trust me, I'd fight anybody. I am not a pacifist. I never have been. I was a boy soldier in the Royal Artillery Battery 2 Army Cadet Force. I nearly became a Royal Marine. I believe that we need armed forces. We need to defend ourselves. Actually, the main people we need to defend ourselves against are the kind of terrorists that ran amok last Friday on London Bridge, and the kind of people like them that our government has been supporting in Syria and elsewhere for the darkest of political reasons. But we need proper armed forces on decent wages, with decent houses, who are looked after when they've come out of the armed forces, instead of being left. Chances are, the guy that my son saw, his little ball of rags, chances are that man was an ex-serviceman. Our ex-servicemen are on the streets, living on the streets in absolutely disproportionate numbers, and in the mental health system, and in the prison system. We abandon our service personnel as soon as we no longer have any need for them. One of the reasons why I'm against the Trident system is that we should be spending that money on actual defence that can be used in the way that the Trident missiles cannot. So, I'm serious about security. I do know about military policy, defence and security matters. If I was asked, as Corbyn was asked last week, would you give the order to shoot an ISIS leader that was in the sights? My answer would be unequivocal. I want to see every last ISIS and Al-Qaeda member dead. I want to see every last one dead. So don't confuse me with a liberal. Don't be voting for me if you think I'm a woolly liberal. I ain't. But I do demand that we control our own armed force. That we're not told who to invade by Donald Trump or the leaders of the European Union. We decide how to defend ourselves. That's what independence means. That's what coming out of the European Union means.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Can I just ask, NHS off to the US. We don't know if there's anything in there or not. But I would say for somebody who's grown up born and bred in West Brom, I don't know how long we've been waiting. There's a new hospital that's supposed to be getting built, and it just hasn't happened. And Boris said that, I can't remember the exact number, but he's putting this money in to build these hospitals. So, and then Labour's saying that, you know, we're going to help you with the hospitals. And moving on from what we just talked about, the armed forces. Well, forget the armed forces, what about the police? You phone up and you got something and you phone up the police, oh, you know, we haven't got time for that. So,
Brother, let me tell you something that'll shock you. 60 people under the age of 18 are stabbed in the West Midlands every week. 60. 700. I got that right?
Yeah.
700 were stabbed last year. The West Midlands has the fastest growing rate of stabbings anywhere in the country except London. And the West Midlands Constabulary is smaller than it was in 1974.
Wow.
Can you believe that? That's almost that time machine I was talking about. It was bigger in 1974 than it is now. Though the population is much greater, the rate of crime is much greater, drugs, which were an absolute rarity then, are absolutely everywhere now. I walk down that high street, I feel high, and I don't even smoke. And the police numbers are lower than they were in 1974. And who by the way, the police station in Dudley is up for sale.
Yeah.
Maybe Dogus is going to open it as a kebab shop. It's up for sale. What, do we not need a police station there? The situation has reached the stage where almost all, except violent crime, cannot be will not be responded to by the police in a meaningful way. If you phoned up now and said your car had been broken into, they'll give you a number. They'll give you a crime number for your insurance. If your house was broken into, they wouldn't come out and take the fingerprints. They'd give you a crime number for your insurance. Now, on the health service...
Don't forget the victim leaflet.
Sorry?
I said, don't forget the victim leaflet.
Yeah, exactly. You'd get contacted by victim support and offered tea and a scone. Now, my next child, God willing, cannot be born in West Brom. How about that? You can't be born in West Brom. Nobody, again, will ever be born in West Brom. It will never say on anybody else's birth certificate, place of birth, West Brom. What kind of madness is that? Who allowed that to happen? What were your politicians doing when that happened? It's an offence against all that's holy. You cannot be born in West Brom. Hard luck, missus. You cannot be born in West Brom. You can only die here. That's all. Now, that's the level, that's the class of political representation that you've had. The fact that you didn't know that. You didn't know it because nobody fought it. Nobody stood up and fought it. If I'd been your MP, do you think everybody in the country would not have heard this point? Do you think I wouldn't be organising thousands of people here in this town to oppose that? You know I would. But your politicians allowed it to go through just like that. So, on health, on police, on public services, we're going to need this revolution I'm talking about. An industrial revolution in the West Midlands. We can't put up with this anymore. Or this will just become, what was the workshop of the world will become like a giant metaphorical slag heap of used materials that nobody pays attention to. Well, as I told the radio station with Charmaine today, when I'm fighting for something, everybody knows about it. If I'm fighting for West Brom, trust me, everybody will know about it.
It's just going on, George, it's just going on about the police. You said there's a smaller police force now and there's more crime. We've had 2 courthouses closed down in West Bromwich, well, Oldby and West Bromwich. The crime rate's up, and on average you've got 3 courtrooms out of 6 in each court now that are operative. You hardly see anybody in court now.
Because there's no cops to catch them.
It's well, the police have been given the powers, haven't they, to charge them and to give them the sanction, on the spot fines and that now. So yeah,
It's a very good point, actually.
Yeah.
So we're selling the police station.
Yeah.
And close 2 courts.
Yeah.
Because hey, there's no crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do we need them? You couldn't make out. Any others? Yes, ma'am.
Can I go sort of, not just for West Brom, the people of West Brom, but for all the people right throughout the country, if I may ask this question? And that is, a lot of people are disillusioned with the politicians. They just don't trust them, and they certainly don't trust the parties either. And a lot of people vote because that's what they've always voted for or whatever, or they vote for according to their class or whatever. Well, one of the problems is parties give a manifesto, and that is what appears what they will do when they get elected, which is one of the few things that people have got to make a choice with. But once they get in, nothing happens. Now Farage has got this idea that the manifesto should actually be a contract between the party that's elected and the people. How do you feel about that?
Well, I hope you're right that people are so profoundly alienated from the existing political parties that they no longer want to vote for them. Because if that happens, I'll be your MP next Thursday, and Chris Williamson will be the MP in Derby, and the Brexit Party will pick up some seats in Hull, for example, in Hartlepool, for example. I'm not convinced that people will not once again vote for the same old, same old. I hope I'm wrong about that. But if I am right about it, that will not change anything. As you know, as Einstein said, the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if the people vote for the 2 cheeks of the same arse next Thursday, don't expect anything good to come of it. And our struggle will continue until we have broken this corrupt system. It's not just that manifestos, especially for, I mean, Jeremy, I don't know how much has Jeremy committed to spend? I don't know. I lost count. I lost count of the trillion. This is monopoly money, confetti. They're proposing to pay the whole of the WASPE bill. They're proposing to scrap the tuition fees and so on. I wouldn't be using the money that way if it was me. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't think students are the #1 priority in Britain. I think poor people are the #1 priority in Britain. And if we give poor people more money, they'll spend it here. They'll spend it, and they'll spend it locally. They'll not go off skiing with it. They'll spend it in the local high street. So if it was me, I would have drawn up a different manifesto, and I would have compensated the WASPE women that needed compensating. I wouldn't be compensating Theresa May with £21,000, which is what the Labour policy currently intends to do. But leaving that aside, what does a manifesto mean when people are just writing? In fact, the WASPE commitment wasn't even in the Labour manifesto. They quite cutely jumped on it when it came up in a debate in the early stages of the election. My problem is that these manifestos are not believable, because the people that are delivering them or projecting them, promoting them, are proven liars. Labour, for example, promised just 2 years ago to respect the result of the referendum. And they immediately almost broke that promise, even though that promise gained them their best election result since 1945. What madness is that? You persuaded 40% of the people to vote for your policy. Your vote increased by a greater number than it had at any election since 1945, and then you ripped it up. And you expect people not to notice. You know, again, brother, sorry for this, at the mosque today. Somebody said you can vote Labour and then you can vote Brexit again, but you can also vote Remain again. And that's a theft of my vote. I already fought Remain and beat them. If you put Remain back on a ballot paper before you've implemented the Brexit, you're stealing from me. And I'm not going to accept it. And millions of people like me are not going to accept it. I will never agree to anybody picking my pocket, either of my money or my vote. I'll fight them. So, we don't have a manifesto. What we are promising is this, only this, that I will fight for you with every breath that God gives me, and until the last. I'll only be here once. You can pick your own MP next time, but hire me for 5 years and I'll take you into the premiership of party. Anyone?
One thing. In light of the fact that come up May next Thursday, whether you get elected or whether you may not get elected, I think you get elected. Would you ever consider, as soon as you know a bit more about Sandwell and Sandwell Council, being the focal point now for a independence stroke movement in the formation of councillors now to get into the council office, Sandwell House, to take on the corruption in Sandwell?
Yeah, I would, because first of all, I'm going to be demanding an independent inquiry into the ongoings in Sandwell Council. They won't be able to stop that. I said to you last week, I'm Clint Eastwood when it comes to these things. I mean, I am the man that kicked the door down. I'm the guy that had the poncho. They're not going to be able to stop me. That's why they're trying so hard, to avoid people hearing what I've got to say, because they're very frightened of that. That's my first job, is to shine a searchlight, not a torch, a searchlight into the murky corners of Sandwell Council. I want to know who's on the tender list. What's the relationship of the people on that tender list to political parties and individuals here in this borough? I want to know what's been happening with this turnover of chief executives and leaders of the administration. All that smells bad to me. And we're going to have to work hard to persuade me that actually it smells fragrant.
So you would consider...
I will, if necessary, we look...
Independent councillors, potential councillors...
We are going tomorrow in West Bromwich to form a new political party. And that political party will fight elections everywhere that we can. And one of our main purposes will be to sweep away the corrupt and the incompetent at local and national level.
In terms of questions, that's all we have time for. So thank you again for coming.
Tuesday night? Can
Sorry.
Paul say what Tuesday night is?
Yeah, that's fine, Paul.
You'll have to ask me at the end, I've forgotten the name of the bloody place. But it's near Charlton to...
Connor Road.
What's it called?
Connor Road.
Connor Road. Have you got it? You call it out, because...
It's the Connor Education Centre in Connor Road, West Bromwich, which is just off the Ollie Edge Road.
Yes.
Is it Ollie's Road? Yeah.
Thank you.
7 o'clock now.
Um,
I'm asking the audience.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
7
7
o'clock.
o'clock, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick little summary. Every time we've ended the meeting, I've always looked at the policies from the parties, but we're getting closer to election day, and I think the summary tonight for me would be just having a look at the 3 candidates and the campaign so far. We have the middle class representative, Mr. Bogus Dogus, who's been spending his time running away from a local blogger, refusing to answer questions. We have Nicola Richards, who's cozied quite up to Sajid Javid and spent most of her election time trying to get in as many pictures with him as possible in businesses and not with the people.
Poor taste, apart from anything else.
Yeah. And then we've had the working class representative on our very own streets. Okay, each day in the rain, fighting to get the message across that the council and the representatives have stopped us from having. But just to reflect that, as a football club, you chose a Croatian, Slaven Bilic, as your premier choice. I know we can trust the Scotsman to make sure the team follows. So on the 12th, please vote for Galloway.